Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there, to the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers. How the heck are you? I want to talk to you today about the strength and resilience and fortitude that we have, but it often comes at the end of struggles around what feels like hardships. In this episode, I literally had to talk about the hardships to get to what the resiliency and the fortitude is, which I think is just a beautiful metaphor for how things often unfold in our lives, that it's hard to have the difficult things that go on, but often what's on the other side of that is this amazing strength and resilience. Here are the themes that I started this episode with that are indicative of the challenges and the things that were coming up that end up leading to this beautiful place at the end. So here are the struggles. Not feeling good enough, feeling like I'm too much, that sense of shame, learning how to listen and honor where we're at, and some of the themes of loneliness, feeling isolated, feeling like I'm not okay. And these are all coming up for a number of reasons, and I'll tell you what they are. One of them is, some of you know I'm working on a book, and we've needed to do some exercises as we're working through the process of writing our book. And so it meant having to kind of dig into some of these old wounds that I really haven't looked at. I talk about things on the podcast, but we had to do an exercise where, well, we didn't have to, but I chose to. We looked at a timeline and some of the things that have happened in our lives. And it's interesting. I felt really vulnerable sharing that I choose what to share with you all, but I don't really look at a timeline of my life. And it opened up some stuff that, even though I've done healing on it, it's still bringing up stuff. So it's not that this is a terrible episode. It is a little bit of a vulnerable episode because I just had shame. I spiraled before recording today. I had another episode outlined that I wanted to do. So I really struggled when I came home. I kind of wanted to talk about the feelings that I was in and decided instead to stick with the script. And then if I felt like I wanted to share afterwards, I would. So let me tell you, there's a little bit of a story, and then I'm going to tie in how these things connect. What initially started, y'all know about the new kayak. This is not totally about kayaking, and I'm having some shame around the kayak stories, but I'm not going to go there. I think it's probably been about 10 days ago, I did a 10-mile paddle. Very, very proud of myself. Part of what I had been experiencing, though, was some pain in my wrist and my elbow and my shoulder. And the more I paddled, the more I had some pain. As I've told you, I got a new kayak, so where I sit in the water is different. I changed paddles. The length of my paddle was too long. I got a lighter paddle. But my body mechanics are different. I wasn't paddling correctly, having broken my wrist last April and having surgery. I have some mobility issues. There are a lot of factors that are involved. And then I'm paddling further than I did before I broke my wrist. I'm also trying to figure out just how to steer my boat straight. And because this boat is more sensitive, something happens when I paddle and my hips shift, and then the boat starts to drift to one side. And so I have to figure out, how to make sure that my body's staying straight and that the boat's not drifting. And what used to be jumping into my kayak and having a paddle has now become a little bit more of an ordeal. And we've talked about this sense of maybe if you drive, you get in your car and it just feels like home and you're settled. And maybe if you rent a car, you drive somebody else's car, you have that sense of, oh, this isn't comfortable. It's not the right thing. My kayak is feeling more comfortable, but I'm not having that sense of ease, and I'm having more concerns about feeling cautious, and I'm just not having that, let's just hop in and go. So I did this 10-mile paddle. The next day I did a 3-mile paddle with somebody because the following day on Monday, Brenda, my paddle partner, was going to be out of town and it was going to rain. And I just wanted to make sure that I got my miles in. I didn't paddle on Monday. On Wednesday, the group that Brenda and I usually meet, they were in Baja and Brenda was out of town for the week. And so the one person that didn't go to Baja, I texted and said, hey, do you want to paddle tomorrow? And they didn't. And I got a little butthurt. This isn't about them. And I'm sharing this with you because we do experience disappointments. I also said to them, I feel like I'm boring you to death. I think because I'm showing up as the student, and it's kind of nice to not have to be in charge. And I have this whole full life that most of you, if you're regular listeners, know about. But here I'm just showing up as a paddler, and it's kind of nice. But I don't think that this person has a clue as to who I am and what I do, because I just don't share it, and I kind of follow, and it's sort of nice. They assured me that I was not boring them to death. I don't think them not paddling with me had anything to do with me. And if it did, it's not about me and it's not my business. That day, the theme of what I'd been talking about with clients is it's okay to have needs. It's okay to have support. It's okay to have that dependency. What do you need to do to take care of yourself? And that day, I literally went with somebody to a new place, stayed with them as they walked through this new experience because there were too many things that were new and overwhelming and unfamiliar. And I know how supportive it can be when we have someone that's just willing to go with us and be with us as we do something new. My whole day, what I'd been telling people is, it's okay to have needs. And as my husband and I walked the dog that night, I felt really disempowered. And as many of you know, my husband is an amazing man, and he offered to go with me down to the bay in the morning and, just sit there and read while I paddled. We made a plan to do that. We didn't put the kayak on the car that night because it was late. We figured we'd do it in the morning. In the middle of the night, I woke up and I thought, my arm is still hurting and maybe I just need to let my arm have a rest. And I did. So I didn't paddle that day. We kind of repeated this process on Friday and Saturday, and I just decided that I was going to let my wrist and my elbow have a break, and I didn't paddle at all. So it's been 9 days since I paddled. And then Monday, I was going to paddle. Brenda was back, and I got my COVID booster Saturday, and I just have a really great body that has a really great, strong immune response, and I just wasn't able to paddle. So 9 days now that I haven't paddled. In the meantime, I'm taking this course that's helping me get organized around writing my book, and we did an exercise last week. And part of what came up for me during this writing was the immense amount of loneliness that I felt as a child and how isolated I felt and how the messages that I got that my needs were not okay, that I wasn't okay. And this activated some trauma for me. I could feel myself in some of the podcasts you've listened to. I've told you, like, this is stupid. I don't want to paddle. And I'm able to push through that and do what I need to do. And I could feel something shifting inside of me where the thoughts were getting louder and my ability to push through was getting smaller. I mean, I'm not saying that I had depression. Maybe I did. This is what often happens with depression, that the thoughts and the feelings get bigger and we're not able to take the action that we need to counter what these thoughts are. I also just watch myself kind of shift from being outgoing and feeling like everything was balanced and I was loving paddling and everything felt great, to things just kind of taking this little twist along with my injury. I did have these thoughts of, what if I don't paddle again? Paddling is stupid. I've told everybody I'm a paddler. Maybe I'm not. I'm going to give this up. I mean, just lots of catastrophic thinking. What was really different, though, is I was aware, like, oh, that's my catastrophic thinking. Oh, I'm wanting to get into extreme thinking. I knew last winter this happened. It was hard for me to paddle. It was cold. It was foggy. It was new. And I thought, maybe I just need to take it slow this winter. Maybe my wrist and my elbow need to heal a little bit. Maybe I just need to slow down. I know I'll get back to it. It'll be okay. So in spite of struggling, I did stay connected to my support system. We just talked about what was going on. I could watch myself, though. I can feel the shift in myself, and it's uncomfortable. And I just did it. So I talked to my paddle partner. We have a plan to meet at 6:30 tomorrow morning. I think I told you, maybe I didn't, that the last time that we met at 6:30, I don't know why I was thinking I could get up at 6 in the morning to be there at 6:30. And I've talked about in one of my earlier episodes that I like to get there early so that I can get everything together. And I don't know, if I have to be there at 6:30, I cannot get up at 6 in the morning. So I was running late. We had talked about meeting, either south or north of the bathrooms where we meet. And even though we said south, she had parked north. So when I got there, I had to move my car. I was running late. It worked out fine. But I haven't paddled in 9 days. We talked this morning about paddling tomorrow morning at 6:30. I reminded myself that means my alarm needs to go off at 5:30 so I can leave the house at 6 o'clock. Today, Steve and I will put the kayak on the car and I'll get everything ready for tomorrow. I also went to go see my occupational therapist, and I was going to stop, a month ago And when I had that last session, we talked about some things that I probably needed to do. So I don't think that I'd been in for a month. And I told him about this pain in my elbow. I let my arm rest for 9 days, and man, he found some spots that really are tight. And it's fascinating to me how, this is connected to that, which is connected to that. So he worked on some muscles not on my elbow, and it relieved the pressure on the elbow. So I will be going back to occupational therapy. I'm grateful to have him. We talked about some stretches that I can use. We talked about what I've noticed, and it makes sense. And then when I left occupational therapy, knowing that I was going to come home and record some episodes, I happened to check the downloads for today's episode that came out. I'm recording this a few weeks in advance. And when I restarted the podcast, my downloads on release days were really, really high, and they've been dropping. I let myself spiral. I mean, it's not like I let myself spiral. It just happened. I looked at the numbers for today, and usually by this time in the day, they're much higher. They were lower last week. As I was driving home, I just went into this place of, this is stupid. Nobody cares about my kayaks. I'm boring people. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. I really don't feel like at this point I have the energy to start doing interviews again. It really takes a lot of work. And with working on the book and everything that's going on, I just don't see that currently as being possible. I may be doing the podcast with somebody else. I'm not sure if that's going to work out, so I don't want to say too much about it. But I went into this place like, I'm just not going to record anymore, and nobody appreciates me, and I'm just too much, and nobody cares about what I'm doing. I mean, I just watched myself spiral. I got home, needed to drop off the key to my mom. This is totally irrelevant information, but she lost her keys last night, and we had to go through this thing to get her keys to her car, and her car wasn't at home. And I've only had one car key to my car. It didn't come with 2 keys, and I've been really careful and I haven't lost it. But after last night, we thought maybe I should get a new car key. So I had to go to drop off my car key to her because she's going to get it replaced today when she replaces her lost car keys. And I was sharing with her what was going on. And as I was sharing with her, what I reminded myself is what I've always done with this podcast is I talk about the things that I'm passionate about, that I care about. And it's resonated. I've had lots of rejections from other people. I've had rejections from big people that I've asked to be on the podcast, from colleagues. There are people that don't appreciate what I'm doing. And I've really had to learn that I got to do what works for me. And I had to remind myself again that if the numbers drop, that I'm going to be okay with that. I really love putting content out for y'all. My gremlins are going off. Okay, if the numbers keep dropping, are you going to keep recording? I mean, it's not my business. I can choose and re-choose. And who knows, maybe tomorrow there'll be a spike. Maybe nobody's listening to podcasts today. I haven't been listening to podcasts. I don't know where y'all are at with the pandemic. I'm on TikTok and everybody calls it the panini. So I don't know where you're all at with the panini, but a number of my clients are really, really suffering. Their worlds have gotten really small. And I can see where that's happened for me, where my fear level is higher. The other day, my husband had just said, I don't even know what the context was, but he said, it's hard because I'm much more conservative and don't take as many risks as he does. And in the moment, that felt totally fine to me. It didn't get my feelings hurt. I said, you're right. That's got to be hard to be around. And within the next 24 to 48 hours, I started to think over that. And where my head went is like, I'm not very fun, and his life is very small because of me, and what a drag it is to be around me. And the reality is, he goes to Laughlin 3 times a year because he really loves that. He golfs a couple times with his friends. He's going to concerts. That just because he has activities that I don't like going to, he has a very full life without me, and I'm okay with that. I also started to think about, yes, I am very conservative about what I feel I'm willing to do risk-wise. And when it comes to emotional risk and being honest and vulnerable, I am just a rock star. And I have more courage in stating what my truth is and being vulnerable emotionally than quite a few people that I know. So when we were walking the dogs, I brought it up. I wasn't angry with him, but I think it hurt my feelings, and we talked about it, and he apologized. He said something that was so kind. He said, you're the strongest person that I know. And it's true. I may talk about the things that hurt my feelings, and I may get very vulnerable, but I'll tell you, when it comes down to it, I'm really rock solid. And I don't think I've talked about this in one of the episodes, but maybe it's a good time to talk about it. My mom and I were swimming a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to her about how I really worry about her dying or Steve dying, am I going to be able to manage? And as we were talking, she was saying that I'm really probably the best equipped to handle death among the three of us. That really stuck with me. Chances are I will overeat, I will withdraw, I will get depressed, and I will rally and ask for support. I will talk about my needs. I will talk about my feelings, and I will thrive. That is who I am. And I think what happens is I see and other people see the strong feelings, the reactions, and see that as weakness. And the truth is, being able to do those things is what allows me to show up in such a strong and solid way. If this is resonating for you and people tell you that you're too emotional and you're too intense and you're too dramatic, you're too analytical, you're too fragile, any of those things, can you do an internal check and see, is that true? And who's to say what to anything is? Comparative to somebody else, maybe. But when it comes down to it, do you really have that fortitude where you can really soldier on? And for many of us that have had a history of trauma, we've had to do some really hard things, and we may have some wounding and some places where we may be more reactive or get our feelings hurt. It just may also be being human. But do we have the ability and fortitude to survive things that not a lot of people can survive? And I think our culture doesn't value sensitivity, and we've gotten messages that there's something wrong with us because of our sensitivity, or this comment that my husband made, and it's true. I'm not willing to take certain risks, especially around COVID. I don't know why, but on my YouTube channel, I did an episode probably a year ago when I was talking about COVID, and while my son was with his girlfriend at the time, and I had rules about who could sit where in the house, and I was thinking about I'd wipe off doorknobs and light switches after my kids came. COVID really scared me, and we didn't know as much about it then, and that's what I had to do to feel safe. And I believe it's another therapist had responded on my YouTube channel about it. Seemed like I was being, I don't know what word they use. What I walked away with is like hypervigilant or controlling. I don't think I responded to them, but I was, so a year later, I'm thinking about this when I'm walking the dog, and I was formulating a response to them about, is this how you showed unconditional regard to your clients as a therapist? I just thought, why would you even say something like that? And I was really fearful at the time. And maybe in another 6 months or a year, I'll look back at this period and say, wow, you could have been doing more. We all have to make choices that feel right for us. And probably to my husband, the choices that I'm making are feeling very constrictive to him. It's just where I'm at. I feel like I've expanded in ways that I feel comfortable, and maybe it's just not what he feels safe doing. I don't know. We all have to do what we have to do. If there are areas where you have those gremlins coming up that are telling you you're not good enough, you're too much, you've got shame, you're feeling like who you are isn't okay, what is it that you need to do to really get in touch with the strength and the fortitude that we have? Because we do have it. My guess is that each and every one of you that are listening right now has been through some kind of trauma, some kind of hard thing, and you have gotten through it. You may have been more emotional than other people have been. You may have been more impacted by it. It may have had more long-lasting effects. You may think about it more than other people do. That's not always a bad thing. I mean, if you're feeling stuck, if you're reactive, if you're not functioning, those are things that you might want to get some healing around. And it may be a combination of doing well and having some suffering. I don't know. But are you able to look at what you've survived, thrived, dealt with in your life, and to see that you really are okay and that you've come out on top of this? Because I guarantee you have. So my overall message is we can rumble with the gremlins, the shame spirals, the fears, the doubts, all of that stuff, and know that this is just how we're wired. We can thrive, we can survive, we get clear on what it is that we need to do for ourselves, and we just take the next indicated step. If any of this resonates for you and you're interested in working together, I do have a couple of open spots. You can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. The online HSP course is starting in January. I think registration is going to be opening up mid-December for maybe 2 weeks. And the online course is going to start, I think, the second week in January. I'm still pulling things together. I don't know that I'm going to be running it 4 times a year. You can go to my website and check it out. I hope you are doing well. I hope you're having peace. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.